Hi everyone, this is Vince Gellman, and it's taken me a few months to muster up the courage and the clarity to talk about something that I feel I need to, as someone who's been an advocate for the well-being of children for quite a while now, and that is the systemic, long-standing abuse of children and the many ways in which we continue to normalize it throughout our society. Um, I think it's important to start by saying what you likely already know, and that is that we normalize our dysfunctional, adverse childhood experiences. We normalize them to cope and survive. We make them okay on some level. On some level, we say to ourselves, it's not so bad what's happening to me, it's no big deal. We do that because it helps to mitigate the overwhelm of pain and suffering in our body. If I say it's not so bad on some level, again, this is mostly unconscious, but as a child, if I say to myself it's not so bad, then I don't have to feel the bad in my system as strongly. If I say to myself on some level it's no big deal, then I don't have to fully own the magnitude of how big a deal it is that I'm being hit, that I'm being neglected, because I need my parents to survive. I need to have almost like a God figure of them. Children hold an infallible image of their parents, or an image of them being infallible people, because they need them to survive. They need that to know that they can go to them to survive. So children blame themselves, or they mitigate what's happening to them. So it is important to understand that to survive, we normalize. But what happens is that this pattern of normalizing carries forward without being aware of it. We unconsciously bring this pattern of normalizing, of it's no big deal, it's not so bad, later in life into how we parent, how we educate, how we relate to kids. So suddenly, spanking a child is no big deal, not so bad. We even say, I do it because I love you. Or, forcing children into a coercive education system where they're forced to sit on a hard wooden chair for hours and hours and learning developmentally inappropriate curriculum. We make that okay because we have yet to confront the pain of our childhood. See, our sensitivity to what children go through, we diminish that because we've diminished what's happened in our own childhood, because we're just disconnected from it. We haven't turned towards the pain in our body, in our nervous system, in our hearts. We haven't turned towards what happened to us. We haven't begun the healing, the facing of what actually were deep failures in love, not just perhaps from our parents, but from our grandparents or other primary caregivers. We haven't done that, so we lack a sensitivity to how we're treating children or what we're putting our children into or through, because we lack the sensitivity to our own inner child's pain and suffering. We have to understand how chronic this is. And so we normalize spanking a child. We normalize, putting children into a coercive education system. We normalize circumcision, which is genital mutilation. We make this somehow okay, and part of the reason why we do this is because the church encouraged it long ago. Spare the rod, spoil the child. The church made it okay to break the will of children. And why did the church want to break the will of children? Because will is related to the word wild, and a wild child is going to hell. A wild child can't be controlled as much, so we need to break the will of the child. And if you look at the history of how children have been treated in such institutions as Protestant correctional institutions, of how they were beaten so badly to break their will into submission, If we look at the historic roots of how much children have been tortured, this needs to be hitting us home in the heart. We need to look at the historic roots of abuse in our society. Look at residential schools. Look at our current industrial modeled schools, that are built around feeding a factory model society. We needed people in the Industrial Revolution to work in the growing economy. So we built schools to mirror the factories that were growing and growing in our society. So we had to have rote workers who suppressed their creativity, who were obedient, and who could comply to authority. We put them in rows, just like the way you work in a conveyor belt system in a factory. Repetitive road duties, submission. Creativity in that model is a threat. Creativity, a creative mind, a creative heart is a threat to the institution. So we suppress the creativity, we suppress the human spirit, we suppress the child. So it is rampant, and it has long been. Now, if we go to the area of sexual abuse, the last time I checked, 1 in 4 girls have been sexually abused, and 1 in 6 boys have been sexually abused. Sexual abuse is rampant. It is rampant, and we know it's being covered up. At least I do. It's being covered up more than we realize. It is the real pandemic of our times. Sexual abuse, child sex trafficking, and exploitation. It is the real pandemic of our times. It is the viral scourge, if you want to call it that has long plagued our society, and that there's a deep cover-up around. And the church does everything it can, although it is crumbling. Its secrets are coming out, but it still does everything it can, along with other authorities, to suppress the horrific treatment of children. We have to wake up to how we have normalized and normalized and normalized. And I know a lot of people who may normalize coercive education are certainly not normalizing sexual abuse. But a lot of people who are normalizing coercive educations are also normalizing circumcision, which is sexual physical abuse. Think about that. We take a child's penis and we chop part of it off, and we make that okay. Keep in mind that decades ago, when I was circumcised, children were not anesthetized. And if you do your research, you may discover that children feel pain 4 times more than adults do. So we have a history of deeply traumatized children growing up into adults who have not done their healing and are not self-aware, and therefore they perpetuate this pattern of abuse, whether that's through physical abuse, sexual abuse, or even neglect. We don't think of neglect as abuse, but it is abuse. It is actually emotional abuse. And as I've said in videos before, in some therapeutic circles, neglect is considered to be harder on a child than physical abuse, because at least with physical abuse, there's some kind of attention. But with neglect, it's like that need for attachment is just so gone. It's like an existential threat to the child because there's just no one there. There's no one there. When I ask my clients, did you feel safe as a child? They usually go to, yeah, I felt safe. I wasn't going to get hit. But the thing is, did you feel emotionally safe? Did you feel emotionally safe? Or when you heard the door open and close and you were in your bedroom, were you scared because you just felt like, even though you weren't going to get hit, an emotional storm was coming into the household, whether it was your father or mother or someone else? So, I can go on and on about this clearly, but what I'm saying to you is that the key piece for me is we have to stop normalizing the dysfunctional treatment towards children, and we stop normalizing it by turning towards and looking at our own pain from childhood, by looking at how we still today are normalizing, making okay, making not so bad, no big deal what happened to us when we were children. That is the key, is we have to confront it. You know, in my many healing ceremonies, shamanic healing ceremonies, I had spirit come to me and show me something brutal that happened to me when I was a child. And I could feel a part of me didn't want to own it. And I heard a voice say, you own it. Own it. Because the thing is the moment you own it, you're going to feel. You're going to feel the grief. You're going to feel the anger. You might feel rage. It starts coming out. Because keep in mind, we normalize in order to not feel. So as soon as you own it and stop normalizing, the suppressed feeling starts to come out. And we are a society that doesn't want to feel. And because we're a society that doesn't want to feel, that perpetuates our need to normalize. And that then perpetuates our need to normalize what happens to children. And so putting them into a coercive education system is just perfectly fine. Perfectly fine for them to continue to learn things that, for the most part, they will never, ever, ever use. While learning developmentally inappropriate curriculum, especially little ones, when their left brain hasn't even fully developed yet, because it's the right brain that develops first. So, circling back, the key is we need to heal. We need to heal. We need to turn towards what happened and be honest with ourselves. And I'm not saying this is easy. This takes courage. It takes courage to heal. It takes courage to be able to see what happened with honest eyes and to feel the truth of that in our body. It takes courage to name the intolerable within so that we can start naming the intolerable that is going around our society. This is what's needed now. We need to wake up. Healing is not just about feeling better. Healing is not just about being more functional. Healing is about waking up and seeing things for how they are, not how we want them to be. Because that's what children do. They see things how they want it to be. They have to survive. And we keep doing that. But the key now is to see things for how they are. But we can only attune that perception if we first look within with radical honesty and the courage to see the truth of our own history, our own childhood experiences. If we want to heal the world and take a stand for children and liberate children, liberate all of us from this historic pattern of abuse, we have to do the work. We have to do the work. It's time, everyone. This is what these pivotal times are about. We cannot wait anymore. We have to wake up. We have to wake up and do the work. We have to wake up. It is no longer acceptable, in my opinion, to spank a child. It is no longer acceptable to hit a child, to neglect a child, to put children into a coercive education system. It is no longer tolerable to me, and I'm guessing to you, to chop off a piece of a child's penis. It's not necessary. It never was. It's intolerable. Now's the time. Now's the time. Let us stand up. And let's stand together and end this historic pattern of child abuse. Thank you. And please share this video because people need to listen to this. Thank you.